we're going to start with the overview of the armrest. We have here in the FendtONE cab the basic components that make up your armrest. We have the multifunction joystick, which is used for driving controls. We have what we call the 3L joystick, which is your loader or hydraulic control lever. There's the push knob here to control your screen. We have fingertip valves here for hydraulic remotes, and then of course the 12-inch terminal over here. That's a quick overview of that, and I'm going to take a deep dive into each one. But before we do that, I want you to notice that we have a color coding system for all of the icons here, all the buttons on the armrest. So you'll see orange on the left-hand side of the joystick, as well as beneath it here. Orange will be anything relating to engine and transmission. So, sorry, my gimbal is just acting up here. Give me 1 second. I have a fancy device that's supposed to take the jitter out of holding the camera, and it's great when it works. Okay, there we go. Perfect. Okay, so if I look at the orange control, that's got everything to do with engine transmission. You will also see blue, which is hydraulics, 3-point hitch, hydraulic valves. There's white, which is freely assignable. You'll see white on the multifunction joystick as well. And then there's yellow, which is your PTO controls. I'm going to start with orange. So let's take a look here. There we go. So on the side of the joystick, for those of you with Fendt 700 Gen 6 and down, you'll have this button here. That's for range 1, range 2. And you'll be able to see on the dashboard which range you're in. So when I press that button, notice how right now we're in range 2, and it shifts over to range 1. That's important because for all things heavy draft work, you need to shift down to range 1. Range 1 is where your transmission is best protected in any heavy pull environment. Range 2 is okay for basically everything else. Loader work, obviously road work, just anything lighter duty work, range 1 is fine. Manure hauling kind of gets into both categories, so we have most operators just using range 2 for that, which is fine. Fendt 1900 Gen 6 and 7. New Fendt 700 Gen 7 will not have 2 ranges anymore, so that has been eliminated. All right. Can you shift while driving? Yes, if it lets you. Typically, you have to slow down. You have to have no load on the transmission. So best practice is to stop, put it neutral, but it will let you shift if the parameters are okay. So the tractor will not destruct itself. All right, foot pedal mode. So foot pedal mode lets you drive with your foot pedal, obviously. When this is turned off, I now drive the tractor with the joystick. So I'm going to demonstrate that. I turned foot pedal mode off, and so now we're in joystick mode. There's one more thing on the back side of the joystick. You can't see it from here, but there's 2 different buttons. The top one is an activation key. That activation key needs to be pressed whenever you're going out of neutral. It's a safety feature. So I'm going to squeeze that activation key and push the joystick forward. And I'm just going to take my park brake off. There we go. All right. So now my joystick will control my speed. The longer I press forward, the faster I go. Pretty basic. Pull back and I come to a stop. I mentioned there's 2 switches on the back, to the top one being the activation key. The other one is a 4-position switch, which controls the sensitivity. Let's get this up here. Try this. There we go. So we'll see that we're currently in position number 2. And when I move that switch on the back of the joystick, I can change that sensitivity. 2 is good. That's probably what you're going to be using most of the time just for driving around. 4 is great for fast takeoff, but you'll find it to be fairly jerky when you want to slow down at slower speeds, especially. 1 is very slow. So that's what that's all about. That switch also will control the responsiveness of your cruise speed. We're going to talk about cruise speed in a bit. So just keep in mind that if you have this set to most aggressive, number 4, your cruise will be targeted at an aggressive rate. You've had it number 1, it's going to take you forever to get there. All right. So that's driving mode. A couple more things while we're in the joystick mode for driving. If I'm driving forward and I squeeze my activation key on the back side of the joystick and toggle left towards the driver, I will shift to reverse. Right? Activation key in, toggle left again. I switch to forward. Okay, so that's like a shuttle switch built into the joystick. There is also a shuttle button on the loader joystick. So all I do there is just press it. And that will change my driving direction. And if that isn't enough, there is also a switch on the left-hand side of the steering wheel where I can change my driving direction from there, if you prefer that. While we're on the switch, if I'm driving forward and I push this switch forward, the tractor will pause. It'll come to a stop. It's like putting in the clutch. As soon as I release it, it's going to start driving again. So if I push the switch in the direction I'm driving, it's going to pause. So now I'm backing up. I push it backwards. It comes to a stop. Where's that useful? Collecting bales. You can use that if you wish. If you want to grab your bale, for example, and you can just quickly hit that for a pause. Let's get back here. Okay. So we discussed ranges. We discussed driving with the stick. And I should now point out how to use foot pedal mode. This is as easy as driving a car. When this is engaged, you still will put the tractor in forward just the same. So squeeze the lever and push forward. But now I'm not driving because we're in foot pedal mode. The tractor is waiting for me to press the foot pedal. And I don't think I need to tell you that I push the foot pedal down to drive. Pretty straightforward. This is my recommended driving mode for anybody who is, number 1, new to Fendt. And number 2, if you're just driving it around to a field, whatever, this is great. But obviously in the field, you're going to not want to sit on the pedal all day. So the driving stick is great for other applications. Okay, cruise speeds. So we have here cruise 1, cruise 2. You will see them listed over here. Cruise 1 is 2 miles an hour, cruise 2 is 5.3. As soon as I start driving and I can bump the joystick to the right, cruise is engaged. Now I just shuttle to the left here and I'm going to back up. Okay, so I'm going to select cruise 1 and I'm going to drive forward here and engage cruise by switching the joystick to the right. Cruise 1 is engaged, it turns green. It also turns green on my dashboard. Great. Neutral, not used for much. Let's see, where do you need neutral? Whenever you want to save a profile, which we'll talk about later. Some people use neutral every time they come to a stop. My recommendation is don't. When you pull back with your joystick to a complete stop, or simply let it off with your foot pedal if you're in foot pedal mode, the tractor will come to an active neutral. It'll hold itself. As soon as you push this neutral button, it's going to put it into a rolling neutral. So at that point, you're actually, if you're on a hill, you'll be rolling. TMS, that is tractor management system. So you'll probably want that turned on most of the time. What it does is lets the tractor decide how much engine RPM you need at any given time. So I'm going down the road, it's going to be at the most efficient setting, around 1700 for this tractor. I'm pulling something and a hill yet too, it's going to be ripping up. Yep, it'll be at its most efficient place all the time. So definitely use TMS wherever you can. And when you're in foot pedal mode, it's worth noting that it'll force you to have TMS on for that to function properly. Our last two buttons here are your engine RPM saved memories. So memory number 1, memory number 2, and you can see over here on the bottom of the screen what those memories are currently set for. You can explore how to set them later. We have here the hand throttle and one more switch. Beside the hand throttle is another dial here. What's that all about? You'll see at the bottom of the screen, when I dial that knob, there's this speed here that changes. This is a speed limiter when you're in foot pedal mode. So if I dial this back to 10 mile an hour, at that point, if I push my foot pedal to the floor when I'm driving in foot pedal mode, it will limit me at that speed. So essentially my foot pedal will become much less sensitive. If I have it at max speed, it's going to allow me to be driving up to 20 in foot pedal mode, and accordingly will be more sensitive. Okay, interrupt me anytime with questions. I'm just going to keep going here. We have here diff lock, auto diff lock, which will be automatically disengaged after 20 kilometers an hour or 12 degrees with the steering wheel. It will not re-engage if it's automatically disengaged. The same is not true for the automatic four-wheel drive. Automatic four-wheel drive will automatically disengage at 20 kilometers an hour as well, or 22 degrees of the steering wheel, but it will re-engage once you enter that zone again. And then, of course, there's your manual diff lock and manual four-wheel drive if you prefer to have it on all the time. All right, that's everything on orange. So I should point out yet, with the white buttons, if you assign an orange feature like drive engine transmission, it will show orange at the bottom of the switch. And that's true for anything. So right now, this is orange. So this is related to engine transmission. That's because I set the front axle suspension to be on these buttons. This is blue. So that means these two remotes are related to the hydraulic function group. Green remote, red remote. White again means it's in the accessories or the other category. Also, auto guide would be white as well. I hope that makes sense. So if you categorize everything with colors, it's somewhat less confusing. Okay, I'm going to move into hydraulics. I've already started that. Here on the fingertip controls, you'll see a host of colors. So again, blue is just telling us that this is associated with the hydraulic function group. These individual colors is simply aligned with the rear remotes. So this is the rear orange remote, rear green remote, pink and red. You can change that very easily. We'll discuss that later. You can individually lock out a remote. At that point, it will not function. You can lock them all with this button here. Just going to turn this a bit so you can hopefully see it better. All right. And if you're using a remote, it'll have a little indicator here that tells you what's going on. Plus minus, a deep press is float, unless you have it configured otherwise, which we can talk about later as well in another session. All right. Much the same concept here. Plus minus is a float if you push it up into the detent. And you can always double check here on your screen to see what a given remote is doing. Right now it's in float, right now it's active, plus minus, and so forth. Okay. While we're in hydraulics, this joystick's the same story. So right now, blue and yellow is with the color of remotes ascribed to it. That's because the loader's on it. And this is another color grouping that defines what this secondary hydraulic switch does. But now that's third function, which is why it's blue. Because it's a 3L joystick, you have a switch on the back side of it that you can lift or lower and enter another level of functions. So I have programmed this thing that when I lift it up, my color grouping now changes to red and green on the main stick and orange for up and down here. Right, so you can essentially use this stick for any of your hydraulic components at any given time, even if you have 8 different ones, for example. So we'll discuss setup of that later, but that's what's going on. You can also turn off that third layer and just use this for 2 functions plus 2 in here. You want to keep it simple. Okay. Let's discuss hitch. So we have here, these 2 are rear hitch. These 2 are front hitch, if it's equipped with that. Let's move this a bit. All right. And you can, of course, individually lock out a hitch as well. You have here float mode and control mode. Float mode makes your rear hitch act like a hydraulic remote. You got up and down, very simple. At that point, the dial will simply be a 1% increment lift or lower, right? So you can see the little indicator of what's going on there. And of course, you can see it on the screen too. In control mode, you can have memory settings for saved depth, for example, when you're plowing. We'll discuss that later and how to set that up. But that simply gives you more functionality. It also gives you draft control. But in float mode, very simple, up, down. PTO. So, sorry. Let's move this around again. For your PTO controls, if the tractor is equipped with PTO, you'll have, like the 1000 series is optional there, but you have rear PTO on the back, front PTO here if it's equipped, and you'll have to press this button twice to engage your PTO. All right, so if I press it twice, it's going to come up with this function selection. That is if I have not yet told it which PTO gear I want. So in this case, I want, let's say, 540 economy. All right. So now that I've selected that, you can see it here on the screen. Now I will have to turn on PTO again. If I had selected that before, that pop-up would not have come up. So 2 presses now engages PTO. You see that green status indicator light come on. That means PTO is turned on. And in your dash, you'll see what current PTO speed is at. All right. 1 press turns it back off. Okay. That's for PTO settings. I'm just looking, what else have we not yet looked at? White buttons. Let's take a dive into there. The Fendt tractors will come preset with several.
Yeah, we got a question here. Can we?
Yeah, go ahead. Yep, go ahead.
Tractor, it shuts off by itself, right?
Okay, you're gonna have to just repeat that question. Sorry, I missed the first half of it.
If you're in the tractor, have it hooked to a PTO implement and have it running, but once you get out of the cab or the seat of the tractor, the PTO shuts off. Is that correct?
Right. Yep, that is right. How's that for cool? I know. So the good news is that there is actually a way around that. I'm really glad you mentioned that, because this is probably one of the main calls we get in the spring when the PTOs start turning. What to do? 2 things. So park brake on, that's step 1. And then here in your hitch and PTO settings, See this little marker? You have to have that turned on before your PTO is turned on. All right, so park brake on, this switch activated. Now I can turn on the PTO and leave the seat, and it'll keep going. So thanks for that question.
Does that make sense to you?
And-
Perfect. Any other questions? Keep going, Leon.
Thank you. All right, so let's take a quick look at white buttons yet, simply because I want you to know what the standard settings are. Again, white is freely assignable, so everyone's tractor is going to be different for what they actually do, but these three here come preset from factory to be mirror control, beacon, and auto guide valve activation. These two show some symbols as well because I have set them to be other things, but by default they'll be blank. All right, and then finally your other preset is your, from factory, is your auto guide engage button up here. So that's where you'll find that. We're going to show you here. If I hit my mirror button, this is obviously only if you have power mirrors. You will come up with the mirror screen. You can select which lens you want to turn. And if you wish, you can use the buttons. I always use the push dial here to change my mirror setting. So I can simply bump it left or right, up or down. It'll change my mirror glass setting. Okay, pretty straightforward. Heated mirror you'll find right there as a side note. All right. Beacon, pretty straightforward. Auto guide, valve activation needs to be turned on before you can use GPS. Once it's turned on, you will have a limited road speed of 20 kilometers an hour, I think it is. So if you're ever going down the road and can't go faster, check that button right there. Good. Okay, so let's go back now to the front dashboard. I want to just give you a quick overview of what you're seeing in there. We've discussed some other things. Okay, so you have, turn it off neutral so we can see this. 4 diverse buttons, icons here. If I select a driving direction, you can now see that I'm in forward. And as soon as I start driving, that will not be blinking. Turn my park brake off once again. Right, so that's simply an indicator of which direction you are either traveling or about to travel. On the left-hand side, we have engine temperature, air pressure, engine RPM, engine hour, def level, current cruise setting. So if I change that to cruise number 2, you can see that. Change it to 5.3. Current driving speed, outside temperature, hydraulic oil level, and keynote here, that is not necessarily at 100% because it doesn't have to be at your hydraulic oil level, right? Separate from the transmission for the Fendt tractors. And your rear PTO speed. And then you'll have indicators along the bottom like your four-wheel drive or diff lock or park brake or various things like that, preheat. So that's for the front dashboard. Now, there are more screens for the front dashboard. And before we go there, I'm going to show you a couple of buttons surrounding the push dial control here. So we've already discussed how we can use this to control the screen. On the 4th button around the top here, you'll see a picture of 2 screens. All right. And when I press that button, let's see if you can see this. There's a blue triangle at the bottom right of the screen, right? So that means that my control dial will now be controlling this screen. If I press that button again, my blue triangle moves to my top screen if you have it equipped. All right, so now my control dial will change settings in there. And finally, one more press of that button moves that blue triangle to the bottom corner of this screen. So now when I bump that control dial, I can page through different screens for my front dashboard display. So clearly this is navigation. Here you have your function assignment screen where you can see what your various buttons are currently assigned to do on your armrest. Hydraulic valves. So you just have a whole bunch of different displays you can have set as your front screen. And there's a bunch of dots along the bottom. You can see which page you're at. So right now we're at second last page, which this is your isobus. And I'm just going to go back to home screen. There we go. All right, so I hope that's clear. We have as well your air conditioning controls here. And this is a bit of a unique dial because it's so multifunctional, but if you turn it, it changes the temperature setting for the cab. You can see that going on here. If you bump it to the right or left, it changes your fan speed. If you press it, it turns the auto air conditioning on or off. And if you press and hold it, it turns on max defrost. All right, so a whole bunch of things going on in there. This tractor is not equipped with infotainment. If it had it, you'll have another dial here with your radio controls. Kind of the same story, turn for volume, bump to skip a track, press to mute, and so forth. Okay, a couple more buttons we didn't talk about. This is obviously your return button. If you're inside a given screen on the terminal here, I can simply return by hitting that button. This is your app launcher button, which brings up your various different compartments in the screen that you can check out. Ryan's going to take us through the screen later. For me personally, I just like bumping this control dial up for that app launcher. It's a really fast way to enter any given controls. All right, and then finally the third button here launches your page where you can reassign your controls to the various joysticks and switches on your dash or on your armrest, which we'll also look at later. Okay, that's that. I'm just reviewing my armrest and noticing one thing I missed talking about, and that is back to cruise speeds. So I told you how we have two different cruise settings here and how they are shown at the bottom of your screen, as well as dashboard. Second one, we have this dial now as well, where you can change that cruise speed on the fly. So that is awesome. You can, so right now we have cruise 2 engaged. And by dialing this thumb dial, you can see your cruise speed changing. You need to know that. Okay. What did I miss? Headlights. You have two different function groups. Function group 1, group 2. You can have both turned on together if you like. You can set up your light settings in the screen to determine what's in what group. So right now, if I turn on group 1, you'll see that they're all in group 1. If I turn on group 2, currently it's only the rear lights, work lights, and you can decide what you want in any given group. I'm just going to save the bottom 2, save that into group 1, right, done. So I hit the save icon, group 1, and now every time I turn on group 1 here, it'll turn on those two. Pretty straightforward. Okay. Just looking over my list. Some of you have ordered tractors with the Profi, excuse me, with the power option instead of Profi or Profi Plus. If you have a Fendt tractor with the power option, power version of equipment, you will not have this 12-inch display. At that point, this control dial will be changing all your settings in your front 10-inch dashboard display. And you'll actually have more functionality. Right now, in a Profi or a Profi Plus, this is information only. You cannot change settings in here. This is view settings only. In a power version, you can change settings. For example, hydraulic valve flow rates and stuff can be done in here.
Leon, this is just, this is your 3-minute warning. But
you.
one question I had is, do the lights on the armrest actually blink?
Oh, so no. Thanks for pointing that out. And I wish we could somehow change that, but this iPhone, just due to frequencies, shows that a whole bunch of these armrest buttons are blinking. And that's not cool, but I don't know how to change that based on the frequency of the camera. So hopefully your operator experience is better than this. Battery disconnect, you'll find that over here on your right-hand console. Your battery disconnect switch, it's a great idea to turn that off every time you exit the cab for the night. It's a great idea. The service department will tell you we typically see less issues because of that. It's kind of like turning off your computer. So make that a habit if you can. You'll notice that it does not disconnect right away. It'll give you, I think, 2 minutes before it'll disconnect. Save everything. Armrest adjustment. This is just getting into the nitty-gritty stuff here, but you can move your armrest position up or down with this lever and forward or back with this one. Up in the top of the cab, you'll have
Leon, can I have your attention? We have somebody here that really wants to ask a question, Ben.
Great. Yep, I'm ready.
Well, Leon, how do the wipers work on this thing?
Well, that'll be on the right-hand side of the joystick, of the steering wheel, excuse me. And you have several different settings all in one stick. So both rear wiper and front wiper are in here. So I'm glad you asked, Ryan. Thank you. First, push forward turns on your intermittent wiper, which can now be fine-tuned with this dial, right? Second, press forward turns on your constant front wiper. And third push, it's fast, which at this point, the wiper is only doing a 180 degree instead of a 300 degree. Okay, back to off. And you pull it back, it'll just do a one-time swipe. If you push it down, now your rear wiper is going. And if you push it down even deeper, your rear washer will turn on. And if you pull it up, your front washer turns on. So, kind of a multi-function stick here, but I hope that makes sense. My time's up. Is there any other questions before I dismiss?
Yeah, we'll go on here, Leon.
Okay.
So will the cab disconnect, reconnect as soon as you open the door automatically?
Okay, I'm not sure if I followed the question. The battery disconnect, is that what you're asking?
Yes, the battery disconnect.
No. The battery disconnect will be turned off. I think it's around 2 minutes after the switch is pressed, and will stay off until you press that button again. But there may be a few functions that are not turned off. Dwayne might be able to answer that. Is the light in the cab, for example? I don't know. So
yeah, most of the functions, most of them will be turned off. And just make it a habit. Everybody will thank you in the service department. Like Leon mentioned, if you turn that off every time you hop out at night, it'll save you some trouble. So just make it a habit. Turn it off.